Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another fabulous review here on Roulette Productions. It is Halloween time. As you can see, we got a little Halloween banner right up there, right up that way. Over that way, we've got... Okay. I'm going to quit trying to get my head out of the way because it's a big fat head. But, as you can see, over my head there we go. A bit of a prop from, well, not really a prop, but recreation poster from a movie that we're going to be discussing today, along with the previous movie in that series. Yep, because it's Halloween, we are going back to our old friend, the Ghostbusters. Those of you who have been following this channel for a while or know me personally know that Ghostbusters is one of the core franchises that I am always here for. I am a big fanboy. Simple put. Now, we've discussed the lower point of the franchise. We did a nice little review of that last year with the Answer the Call remake movie. This year, I thought we would go in the opposite direction. Go all the way back to where things began. Oh yeah, also got my new Halloween shirt here, folks. Woo! It's not Ghostbusters related, but it is a classic icon. Just so people don't sit there as I go over the review and see the very top of it and wonder exactly what it says. There's your full shirt view. But yes, we're going to discuss the first two Ghostbusters movies. And why are we doing that? Because I've never done it. I've been trying to dance around this because, as I said, these movies are the core of the franchise. They're the classic two movies done in the series, and that means that they are really what everything builds off of. Yes, the real Ghostbusters cartoon started between the two movies being made, but hey, I'm doing them as a duo, and the second movie definitely helped the cartoon in that it reminded people beyond Saturday morning that the Ghostbusters were a thing. And of course, obviously from there you have the toys, the video games, the comic books, the novels. I've actually got right here. It's wonderful for any fans of the classic material. I'm going to go ahead and put this up. I'm not going to tell you where to buy it because that's too much of a plug for somebody that's not sponsoring me. But as you can see there, this is a double set book, nice and thick, of the novelizations for the first two movies. And what's fun about it is those are not the original, those are not a brand new novelization. That edition just came out a couple years ago, a few years ago, somewhere, relatively recent times. That is a collection of the novelizations that came out when these two movies first came out, so it's good stuff. And like all good novelizations, I do recommend it, even after you watch the movies we're going to review today, because it is based on an earlier shooting script, and as such has scenes that did not make the final cut of the movie, expands upon scenes that were short and sweet in the movie, as well as just gives a little more get inside the characters' minds. It's one of those things where reading differs from movies. But enough of that. That's not the topic for the day. Still, if you are a big Ghostbusters fan, I would recommend getting that. It is the most convenient way to get the novelizations of the first two movies, which is the goodness. Alright, so we have the first movie, Ghostbusters. Occasionally in the earliest shooting done as two words, nowadays it's just considered one, is a 1984 comedy film with supernatural / sci-fi elements. I say sci-fi in the fact that they are using technology that does not exist in real life, thus science in fiction, fictional science, sci-fi. But definitely has that supernatural feel to it with all the ghosts running around. Of course, we all know the core cast: Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Ernie Hudson, Rick Moranis, and Annie Potts. However, we should give a lot to the director, Ivan Reitman, who contributed a lot of work, not just, of course, to directing the movie, but helping get the script polished up to the gem we know it is today. And of course, there is the wonderful music by Elmer Bernstein. Again, go look up the Ghostbusters soundtrack. It's got some wonderful scores in it. Just wonderful work by a great by a great musician, orchestra person. Basic plot of the movie. I'm not going to go super into detail here because, A, for those of you who've never seen my movie reviews, I don't go super in depth because my goal here is to entice you to watch the movie. Not to feel like, oh, I don't have to because I just saw a YouTube video that told me everything in the movie, showed all the best clips. I feel like I don't need to see the movie. Let's be honest, folks got enough of that problem nowadays with movie trailers. So, here's a quick and dirty review. 3 scientists studying at Columbia University the science of parapsychology, which is a real-world science and is the study of things that are beyond the norm. Primarily ghosts and psychic abilities. You have Egon, the hardcore scientist who oftentimes seems emotionally detached from reality. You have Ray Stantz, the boisterous inner child is not that inner, smart guy who is always eager to experience things. And Peter Venkman, who on the surface seems more like a hustler and a con artist, although it should be noted he is the only member of the 3 to have a degree in classical psychology. This means that, while yes, he often does use this ability to understand the human mind to be a better hustler, he is, as proven by the fact he could get this degree, somebody who can sit down and hit the books when he needs to. Trust me, getting a degree in psychology is not easy. Now, shortly after having an experience at the New York Public Library, where they encounter the ghost of a librarian, classically known as the Grey Lady, though expanded canon has given her the name of Eleanor Twitty. They are kicked off campus when their grant is pulled by Columbia University, meaning they are unemployed, have lost most of their resources, but after the encounter with the Grey Lady and the equipment they use to measure her and her presence, Egon is convinced he can create equipment that will allow them to capture and indefinitely detain, i.e. trap, ghosts. Peter sees this instantly as a great business opportunity and a chance to avoid the trio having to part ways and get real jobs in the commercial sector. After a bank loan to secure funding, they set up in a rundown firehouse in one of the less prestigious neighborhoods in New York, and the Ghostbusters are born. Hiring Secretary Janine Melnitz to man the desk. Ghostbusters struggle at first, however, after capturing the ghost now known as Slimer, they get a bit of positive press at the same time as Dana Barrett, concert cellist, experiences a weird haunting in her apartment where her fridge temporarily turns into a dimensional portal and some otherworldly being identifies itself as Zool. Thus, we have the next major bulk of the movie. The Ghostbusters see business take up as ghosts start showing up all over town. And they get so busy, they take on a fourth member, Winston Zeddemore. Played, of course, by the brilliant Ernie Hudson. Now, with four of them to help split the workloads, the Ghostbusters continue to bust ghosts, have a good time doing it, and study Zool and Zool's master Gozer. This leads to the final act of the movie where Zool is joined by its partner in crime, Vince Clortho, who possesses Dana's neighbor, Louis Tully, played by Rick Moranis, who's, of course, one of the great comics of our time, and a wonderfully kind man in real life. With the two of them possessed by the spirits of Zool and Vince Clortho, aka the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper, Gozer is unleashed upon our dimension and proclaims that Gozer will destroy all because that is what Gozer does. The Ghostbusters manage to, after a night spent in jail, thwart Gozer, banishing it back to the dimension it came from. So, what makes this movie so brilliant? Honestly, and again, I say this as a super fan of Ghostbusters, it's not the overarching plot. I mean, it's a perfectly fine, serviceable plot. There's no major continuity errors present within it. It proceeds at a good pace. There's a wonderful montage sequence of them busting ghosts all over town, featuring a cameo by then popular radio DJ Casey Kasem, known to cartoon fans around the world as one of the voice actors of the classic Scooby-Doo, among other roles, which, again, I could do a whole video on Casey Kasem. I may in the future. As well as various local New York personalities. Still, if it's not the overarching plot, what is it? Well, to be fair, the special effects were very good at the time. In fact, some of the effects were cutting edge, and the effects house actually had to come up with some new ideas of ways to make the ghosts appear on screen, clearly be ghosts, and I will say there is a wide variety of designs to this. Every ghost looks unique, but at the same time still have that eerie, it doesn't belong in this reality feel. So, okay, special effects carry the movie. The plot is serviceable. What makes the movie is the performances of the individual actors and actresses. Honestly, for the rest of this review, to make it easy, I'm going to use actors in the gender-neutral term. Everybody that acts in a movie professionally is going to be referred to as actor. Just helps keep things flowing along efficiently, and frankly, again, it's a good catch-all term. We don't get in the issue of, well, this person prefers to use this title. You know what? For the sake of use, you're all actors. We don't need separate gender-based terms for the same occupation at this point in time, at least not on my channel. But as I said, the cast is what carries it. Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd had already built up a history working together, along with Harold Ramis, who would, before and after Ghostbusters, spend the next several years working regularly with Bill Murray on a variety of comedy films. If you really want to see them have some more fun playing off each other, go check out the movie Stripes. I believe I've reviewed it before on this channel. Go check that video out. Hey, internal plug. You have Ernie Hudson, who is a classic actor who's played in a variety of roles, both comedic and dramatic, along his career, and is a great straight man to the characters. Quick breakdown: the character of Winston Zeddemore, as I said, was hired after the fact when the Ghostbusters found themselves too busy to keep working as a trio. He has a background as a soldier in the United States Marine Corps, as well as working construction. So he is a good street smart style character, which plays well off the book smart Egon and Ray. Janine Melnitz, played by Annie Potts, is the perfect acerbic, snarky secretary. She manages to keep Bill Murray's Peter Venkman on his toes, while at the same time crushing on Egon, and managing to keep the business running smoothly while these three yahoos run around shooting stuff with laser beams. Then, of course, you have the aforementioned Louis Tully and Dana Barrett as the future victims of Gozer, and Dana Barrett also being Peter Venkman's love interest, because you got to have a little romance in every movie. Sigourney Weaver is, of course, wonderful actor who completely plays off Peter Venkman wonderfully as the kind of woman who finds him initially kind of creepy, somebody that you regret having started talking to begin with, but as the movie goes on, warms up to him and sees the inner human inside. As I have said to various people before, one of the things that makes Peter Venkman is, while he is a perpetual hustler, always looking for a way to spin everything to his advantage, he is extremely loyal to his friends and often uses his powers for good and not just the pure self-interest he likes to make it appear at first glance. Louis Tully, of course, is a bit sporadic in the early parts of the movie, but is a wonderful, pure comedic character who you feel bad for because he's a bit nerdy, he's a bit of a loser in his social life, but he keeps a positive attitude and keeps trying his best. Even after turning into a terror dog, he, at the very end of the movie, is still Louis Tully. He does not let the experience traumatize him. And of course, you have many people playing various roles as well. As I said, we get cameos from Casey Kasem, Larry King, the infamous Walter Peck, played by William Atherton, who serves as a secondary antagonistic role in the movie. Peck would later go on to refresh the character in the most recent movie, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, in a nice little continuity nod. Still, I often say one of the things that makes this movie, and its sequel, which we'll talk about in just a second, is the way the characters play off each other and the way the comedy is presented. Which is that you do not build scenes to justify a punchline you want to tell. This is the kind, which works for sketch comedy, it works for stand-up, where it's all about the punchlines. Everything you do after one punchline should be building to the next punchline. This is a movie. The comedy should be there to help keep the story maintaining the tone you want it to have. And that is where Ghostbusters hits it brilliantly. A lot of the jokes are delivered in a very just dry, matter-of-fact manner. It is the characters playing off each other. You never feel like the different characters are just launching jokes at you quickly to try to one-up each other and be known as the funny one in the movie. They all play off as personal friends and work buddies who just bounce off each other the way we all do in real life. Peter's sitting there constantly running a mile a minute, always looking away to spin everything to make himself look like he's just the kind of charming guy you should totally let hold your wallet, even though every instinct tells you not to. And you would think a guy like that, how could you, oh man, that would get exhausting. But Ray, he just bounces off of it. Peter says something over the top, and Ray just smiles at him and then keeps going on with his science. Egon just completely no-sells it, but at the same time, you see multiple times in the movie Egon stepping back when things like reporters and police and the occasional politician want to talk to the Ghostbusters, knowing this is Peter's forte. He'll stand behind Peter, subtly, feed him hard data so Peter can continue to BS at a very believable pace, but he will happily let Peter do most of the social interaction so Egon can focus on the hard data crunching. Little internal calculator kind of brain. And that is the beauty of it. The comedy never feels like it's intruding upon the pace of the plot. It just is there organically. These are interesting personalities playing off each other. It's been said by more than one reviewer that if you simply look at the jokes like in a typed out format, little transcript, or case of like downloading the actual script, half the jokes don't hit. You look at it and you're like, okay, I see where that's supposed to be a joke, but when the actors play it out though, when they put the personality behind the jokes and you see the jokes in that context with that chemistry that the actors had with each other, you laugh. You 100% live in that moment because that is the kind of comedy it is. Heck, it's been confirmed. Some of the best jokes in the movie were not even in the original shooting script they were working from. They were improv in the moment because the actors were feeling the characters and felt like that's the best reaction they would have. And they kept it because they were right. Wonderful example of this would be Dana Barrett's referring to Peter Venkman as not acting like a scientist, more like a game show host. That was not in the script Sigourney Weaver was given. She said the line because that's how she felt about Peter Venkman in the moment. And everybody loved it. It's like, no, she's right. That's a brilliant line. That is exactly what Dana Barrett would say in that moment. And the audience is going to love that line. And to me, that is what I love about Ghostbusters. I'm a guy who enjoys the supernatural. I've done a video talking about this. Quick, long, and short of it is, I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, a town that is very steeped in ghost stories and haunted history. Downtown Savannah, seems like every other building has a ghost story attached to it, if not a couple. So I grew up in that environment where we're not saying everybody believed ghosts were real, but ghosts weren't just laughed at and dismissed by most people in town because, hey, I've never seen one, but man, I got a cousin that swears they've seen at least 2 of them. Like, I got a friend that believes. I'm not going to dismiss them outright. Honestly, I've seen a couple weird things. I'm not going to say it was a ghost, but it was some weird stuff. That's the kind of town it was. So a movie that takes the idea of ghosts existing and builds off of it, off the idea that, and yes, this was going on in real life leading up to the before the movie existed. That was one of the things that inspired Dan Aykroyd, was him and his father's real life study of the supernatural and people that were trying to gather good data about it in the 70s and 80s, if not decades earlier. But still, it was like, for me, that was one of the first encounters I'd had of it in entertainment where it was real. It was an accepted thing. Like, yeah, you get a couple characters in the movies that are like, oh yeah, we all heard ghost stories, but we didn't take them too seriously. But like, you don't see this any point in the movie where it's like everything screeches to a halt and people are just like, oh my god, ghosts are real! My perception of reality is shattered! No, it's a world where we all grew up having that one friend, if not family member, that swears they've seen a ghost. That swears, their house or their buddy's house is totally haunted. So when the Ghostbusters come around and they're like, yeah, we know ghosts exist, we can show them to you, we got a trap and a containment unit, we're making a business out of finding the ghosts and dealing with them because we've studied them scientifically. People are surprised, but they're like, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. We've all suspected on some level ghosts exist. Somebody at some point would have had to figure out how to capture them. Because that's human nature, and that's a great foundation to build a movie, especially a movie franchise, from. And it's weird. Like, I could honestly, as I said, I could do a scene-by-scene breakdown. In my mind, Ghostbusters is one of the 10 greatest movies Hollywood's ever made because it is everything a movie should be. It's got a great tone to it. It's got great dialogue. It's got a story that you don't have to sit there and forcibly strain yourself to be like, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. You're just like, yeah, no, it's ghosts, and somebody figured out how to capture ghosts. Okay, we can roll with that. And it's, simply put, spooktacular. As I said, the special effects, they hold up today. In fact, because a lot of them were practical effects, honestly, they look better than a lot of the CGI stuff you get in newer films. Yeah. The Fort Ghost, excuse me, what's it there? Try to find that character. Fort Detmering. Yes, got to address this properly. The Fort Detmering ghost was the ghost of a lovely female played by Kim Herron. This was a pure practical effect. They put the actress, Miss Herron, in a gown, applied, glowing paint and stuff to the gown, and hung her from the ceiling for her scene. It was a pure practical effect. And it looked great. You can watch the movie now, and it feels just right. And this is one of the things where that novelization comes in. It was originally filmed as a full scene it was later cut to just a small chunk of the scene and inserted into the montage sequence midway through the movie. The novelization uses it in its full scene version. Wonderful job. But that's what I'm saying. Stuff like that, that's where practical effects are great. Still, we do got one more movie to cover. Probably not going to spend quite as long on it. This review's already going a bit, but you know what? We haven't done a review for a little while. Took a bit of a break. So, this one's going to be probably a touch longer than the reviews I was doing earlier in the year. Still, we have Ghostbusters 2. 5 years later, the movie was made. Same crew. We add Peter MacNicol as Janos Poha. Wilhelm von Humberg as new bad guy Vigo. Quick plot breakdown. After the defeat of Gozer, ghostbusting kind of dried up as an occupation. The Ghostbusters went their own way. Egon went back to laboratories, studying the effects of emotions on the environment. Ray opened up an occult bookstore. Peter got into public access television hosting, World of the Psychics. And Ray would team up with Winston for some side money doing birthday parties as the Ghostbusters, typically kids' parties. As Ray would refer to them at one point in the movie, ungrateful yuppie larva. Still, you do what you gotta do to make a buck. Especially in the 80s. Kids, go ask your parents or maybe grandparents about it. Whew, we're all getting older, nobody's getting younger. Making money in the 80s was not easy. But the good news is that things are brewing. Deep beneath the sewers of New York City, a river of pink slime is bubbling beneath the surface and raising psychic turbulence across town. At the same time, Dana Barrett, now with a baby, having broken up with Peter Venkman, hooked up with another professional musician, had a baby, they broke up. She's single mommy. You know, good for her. Don't be afraid. Don't stick with a guy that's not good for you, especially if he chooses to leave you. And she has a bit of a experience herself when the baby carriage decides to pilot itself down the street and into oncoming traffic. Going first to Egon, who later recruits Ray, and begrudgingly Peter when he crashes the party. The three of them investigate, discover the river of slime, and after a bit, its connections to the museum where Dana is working part-time until she can go back to being a concert cellist full-time. It's not easy to schedule those performances when you've got a baby at home. You know, again, you do what you got to do, folks. Specifically, the museum has unearthed a painting of Eastern European dictator from previous centuries, Vigo. Which, hold on, right here we have lovely visual aid. Vigo. Still in box, just got them. Have not had a chance to properly display them like what you see on my shelf in the far background, but he will be joining them soon. Now, the painting is not a simple painting of Vigo. It, in fact, houses his spirit. Vigo was a warlock, practicer of black magic, sorcerer, Again, I'm not trying to get involved with any actual occult followings in real life. Pick your term you prefer of bad guy who uses dark magic. Vigo was loosely inspired by the public persona reputation of the Mad Monk of Russia, Rasputin, including getting a variant, Vigo's death being a variant of the legend of Rasputin's alleged death, which basically involved having to execute him multiple ways concurrently because he would not die easy. Just before dying, Vigo's last words were, "Death is but a doorway, time is but a window, I'll be back." And thus, we find him possessing his own painting. After magically brainwashing the museum head, Janos Poha, Vigo begins feeding off the power of the slime drifting under the city, which turns out to be, hey, remember when we said Egon was studying the effects of emotions on the environment? A mood slime. Powerful negative emotions agitate the slime, and if enough of it is applied, it can in fact spawn ghosts, which is what we start seeing around town, causing the Ghostbusters to reopen business. And of course, recruit Janine to run the office again. Once again played by the great Annie Potts. As well as Louis Tully from the first movie, whose role is slightly expanded in that now he is the Ghostbusters accountant and still somewhat amateur lawyer. As he said, he mostly does tax-related legal cases, a little bit of probate stuff. He got his degree at night school. Still, he is there. Rick Moranis, being awesome, is always something you should have in your movie if you can get away with it. Everything converges as Janos decides that Dana's baby Oscar would be the perfect new host body for Vigo. And on New Year's Eve, taking full advantage of the fact that the Ghostbusters, having fully understood the power of the River of Slime and its connections to Vigo, try to warn the mayor, and that part of the process of neutralizing this threat is discouraging New Yorkers from being jerks to each other, prompting the wonderful line from the mayor, "Being miserable is every New Yorker's God-given right." And of course, they are once again detained, this time in a mental asylum by the mayor's assistant. And the River of Slime breaches the surface of the streets and leads to a full-on ghost invasion. They are sprung from the mental hospital and go to face Vigo in the final battle. Again, I'm not going to give you too much nitty-gritty because I do want you to watch the movie. And there's a lot of interesting plot points I don't want to spoil for you. So let's break the movie down. The base ideas that we discussed in the first movie a few minutes ago still apply. The movie doesn't have the strongest story ever put to film, but it is carried by the dialogue and the chemistry between the actors, as well as the special effects, which you would expect from a supernatural comedy. More importantly, you also get the fact that when it's all said and done, it is a sequel. Yes, there is some plot points that are retreaded because you never want to steer too far from what worked the first time. Some people do criticize that it just feels like, a different way of telling the same story. Nah, you can really say that about most sequels to any movie. Let's be honest. Let's be fair. That's kind of what makes movies sequels, as opposed to like spin-offs or full-on remakes, is you hit similar plot points, you give the movie a familiar feel, but you still bring some new things to the table. Now, the breakdown is this movie as good as the first movie? No. As I said before, in all fairness, Ghostbusters is one of the greatest movies ever made. Not in the sense of, oh, it's going to just knock you down and blow you away with how epic and incredible it is. I know that's what a lot of people think a good movie has to be now, or especially a great movie. No. In my mind, a great movie is always just something that you enjoy watching. It's comforting because it's entertainment. It's the kind of thing where, a great movie like the first Ghostbusters is something where you catch it on TV or you see it pop up as an option on your favorite streaming service and you go, yeah, I could watch that. It's like you don't really hate the movie. But you're never really going to look at it as, God, I got to force myself to watch this. No, you're like, yeah, no, that'd be a way to kill some time. That'd be good. It's kind of what, yeah, you can say I'm in the mood for it. And that's what you want from a good movie. Something where it's always going to be there for you and it's always going to give you that sense of comfort as you just lose yourself in the movie and detach yourself from reality and all the stresses reality can give you. And Ghostbusters 2 does hit that same itch. Not quite to the same level as the original. Unfortunately, as I said, it is a sequel. There was the development of the cartoon at the same time. In fact, let's go ahead and get the years laid out for you. Yeah, the real Ghostbusters started in 1986. So 2 years after the first movie and 3 years before the sequel. It ran until 1991. So as I said before, the cartoon did kind of live in that same period, starting before the second movie and going a couple years beyond it. So it's like we had the original movie. We had the cartoon, which, was its own entity, but it was still Ghostbusters. It was still the four boys and their assorted staff. So the second movie was, in a lot of ways, more of what we had been getting pretty consistently since the first movie came out. As I said, the toys were out there. Ghostbusters was an understood thing by 1989. Still, I will always stand by the point that it is a very good movie in its own right. It does not do anything majorly wrong. The mythology building of the concept of the mood slime and Vigo as a different threat from Gozer. Gozer is a higher being, essentially, again, for religious purposes. I don't like to use the term God, but it is there. In the pantheonic, small g sense, yes, Gozer was a god. Gozer was the destructor. Whereas Vigo was a human tyrant who, yes, had access to supernatural power, but was not supernatural power in and of himself like Gozer was. So it was a different kind of threat. It was a more personal human threat. That is the kind of thing that, you do with a sequel. As I said, you change a few elements here and there. And again, the character, played by William von Humberg, voiced by Max von Sydow, who, Max von Sydow, that's a voice for you. I think I'm saying that. All right, let me. Yeah. Yep, Max von Sydow. Incredible actor. Wonderful voice. Very creepy, terrifying voice. And as I said before, you have Peter McNichol as Janos Poha. Peter McNichol is a wonderful actor. Has great comedic chops in his own right. You also have the human antagonistic character, instead of Walter Peck, is now Jack Hardemeyer, portrayed by Kurt Fuller. Does a wonderful job in there. If you want to know where you know Max von Sydow from, especially in the sense of Halloween horror, he portrayed Father Merrin in The Exorcist. So there you go. Chef's kiss. So yeah, Ghostbusters 2 unfortunately had to follow up an almost perfect movie. So it does have that unfortunate loss of reputation essentially to it, in that people look at it as a little bit less good of a movie than it honestly is, because it's just so hard to follow up Ghostbusters 1. But 2 is the kind of thing where it's like this. Watch the first Ghostbusters. If you enjoy it and you're like, man, yeah, I totally get why this is a franchise. Like, I could use some more. I could use some more of this. By all means, go see Ghostbusters 2. It will fix that little itch. It will fill that need for you. It'll do a good job of it. At the end of the day, though, you kind of see why. And yes, there's behind-the-scenes drama reason for it, but you kind of also see why there wasn't a huge rush to do Ghostbusters 3, because it's like, you went from one way up here to 2 down here. You don't want to do a third that gets it down to here, because now we're not in a good place. Now again, part of that was behind the scenes drama. As I said, within a few years, Bill Murray and Harold Ramis would stop working with each other. Dan Aykroyd had problems as one of the main writers behind both movies, finding a script that everybody was on board with. Heck, there was even some behind-the-scenes drama with getting Ghostbusters 2 made. The long, short story of it is that one of the deals was, even if the studio really wanted to do it, they could not make a Ghostbusters 2 unless Aykroyd, Ramis, and Bill Murray all agreed to make it. Bill Murray has gone on record of saying he does not like doing sequels, never has. So there was problems getting a script that he would be 100% in on, including one of his points is that he felt like Ernie Hudson not being the original choice for Winston Zeddemore and being a character that came in partway through the movie was not given enough to work with in the first movie, and wanted an expanded role for the character of Winston Zeddemore in the second movie, which he did get. He got more interactions with the different characters, got more dialogue himself, good times. So, it took a little while. Part of the reason why it was 5 years between movies was, as much as certain people wanted to go ahead and make the movie, other people involved that needed to stay involved did not want to. And of course, you had the same process, more so with 2 to 3. I know eventually, of course, we would get a third movie in Ghostbusters Afterlife many years later. There would continue to be, as I said, the real Ghostbusters cartoon would run for 2 more years. Would get a single season sequel called Extreme Ghostbusters. There would be various comic books, expansion novels, some of which we've reviewed already on previous videos. As I said, people know this channel, know Ghostbusters is a big thing for us. And when it's all said and done, there was, of course, the famous, speaking of follow-up media, aptly titled Ghostbusters the Video Game, which was highly based off the script that Dan Aykroyd had been tweaking and trying to work on throughout the 90s for Ghostbusters 3. When the game first came out, Dan Aykroyd, in fact, said that at this point in time, this video game was, for all intents and purposes, Ghostbusters 3. As I said, flash forward several more years, we got Ghostbusters Afterlife. It's okay. That's the way things happen with media franchises. Still, what does all this mean for you and for Halloween? Well, as I said, if you've never seen these 2 classic movies before, these should be on your must-watch Halloween list. You got a lot of ghosts, you got some creepy moments, but it's lighthearted and fun enough that even people that are not big horror buffs and are easily scared can enjoy the movie. If you've seen them, but it's been a long time, go ahead and rewatch them. Rewatch them with a fresh mind and appreciate them for what they are, which is supernatural comedy that helped define the 80s, really up through, as I said, the early 90s. But they are perfect examples of what 80s comedy was, and you can watch it and then watch pretty much any random comedy made in the last few years, even the follow-up Ghostbusters movies, and you can see how comedy has changed over the decades along with our culture. Still, I am going to give you a happy Halloween. We got one more video coming. It will be out. Let's see. This one will hit here. Yeah, it will actually be out on Halloween Day. I know in years past we have done it as a bonus video because these ramblings come out on Fridays, and so we would upload it on whatever day Halloween was. But since Halloween is a Friday this year, bing bang boom, there you go. It'll just be a second video this month at the usual Friday schedule. Perfect! So yeah, do keep an eye out for that video as well. Feel free to go through the rest of my archives. If you go and click through this channel's playlists, you will see a list of Halloween Friday ramblings, so you can fully binge on supernatural fun, as well as a variety of Halloween video game playthroughs that I have done over the years. Good times for all involved. In the meantime and in between time, as always, remember, you don't have to love everything, but keep your criticism constructive. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe, and enjoy your entertainment. Bye-bye, folks.